Welcome. I'm Bermalva, and this is the premiere edition of Bermalva Talks, a segment of my new YouTube channel. A channel of interviews on subjects that enlighten and liberate, shining light on the obscure, the unknown, and the mystical aspects of life. And joining me today is Joana Filgueiras. Welcome, Joanna.
Thank you.
So she's joining me today to talk about sex and love. So this is a very prominent subject in today's world. So Joanna, I wanted to talk to you today about your healing journey and all the wisdom that you've collected on your journey over the years around attachments to relationships and to love and to sex. So I'm curious to know what brought you to this subject in particular, and tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Sure. So for me it was actually interesting because a few years ago I was 31 and I broke up a relationship that was like New Year's Eve. It was 2 days after New Year's Eve, and I broke up a relationship with someone, and I was in so much pain and so much suffering that it didn't match the feelings I had for this person per se. It was kind of like, it's not for this person. It just didn't make sense. Like in the past, I had relationships that the previous one was someone that I was completely obsessed with. So for me it was normal. It's like, oh, this is how you feel when you really like someone. But then with the last one, it was just like, I didn't like him that much. There is something wrong with this scenario, So it kind of made me go and research something called love addiction that most people think is just a joke. But it made me research, and it brought me into a search of myself and something much deeper. And just, I needed to change my life. It wasn't working the way it was.
And so after that inquiry, what sort of space did that open up into your life? What did that bring you? Where did you go with it?
So it has been about, I would say, close to 3 years now that I'm in this journey. And it has been the most incredible journey because it has brought me in contact with myself and the love that I've been searching for being in myself, and discovering my life without having to be attached to someone, without having to have a boyfriend or a husband or an obsession. It cleared up. It was a very deep process. It wasn't, oh, I have this, let me. It took me to the bottom before I was able to see the light, but it was worth it. It brought me into a much better relationship with my family, better friendships that made, the whole search made me realize that my love addiction wasn't just I need a boyfriend and I need to get married. It was I need to have the friends that are not very reliable. They're not there for me. It wasn't my relationships in general in my life, they weren't real. So it changed the way I performed their work. It changed the way I related to friendships. It changed my whole view of what a healthy relationship is. It brought me closer to my family and to actually a healthy relationship with my family. But more than anything, it made me love myself more and be in peace with who I am and like the person I am.
Mm-hmm. You touched on the idea of obsession.
Mm-hmm.
So what part is that in the sex and love addiction? Where does that fit in? And can people be obsessed without even being in a relationship?
Yeah, so for me it was always the fantasy. So as far as I can remember, I was a child and my grandma used to live in front of a church, and on the weekends I would go to the window and watch the brides. There was this obsession, this look for salvation, and just the dream, the dream of I usually say that people want a wedding, they don't want a marriage. It's like that dream of the perfect day and the perfect moment. And what I see a lot is in my life, I'll talk about my life. It's every time there is something that is uncomfortable, it brings me into a different obsession or a fantasy. It's kind of like, let me dream about this moment so I don't have to deal with reality. And it doesn't mean that my fantasy is perfect. Sometimes it's disturbing, but it's so hard to bring myself back to reality. Sometimes it's like, it's good where it is. Let me stay in my head. But what I realize is that I can't change my reality if I'm not there. So I have to bring myself back to present, and I have to be here. And it reminds me of something that a former therapist said, is like, if you're not in the present, you're not enjoying what it could be because it doesn't exist, and you're not enjoying the good things that are here because you're just not present.
And so, do you see this as being something that's very common in our culture? Is it something that is everywhere? Is it like a niche, or where is this?
I kind of feel like we are programmed for that. It's in the music, you know, when you hear the music, it's all the drama and the I can't live without you and I'm gonna do everything for you, and it brings all this fantasy of what love is, you know. And I think modern music is very bad. There's usually somehow what I hear is like the man is always like, I don't care about you and I'm just using you, and the women are just like, oh my God, but I love you and I need you. But I think it's just in society. It's like in the movies. It's everything around is in the pressure to get married, and in the fantasy of being engaged, and in the all the celebrities always getting married and divorced and married and divorced. You know, it became something just, you're better if you have someone, you're better if you're married. If someone wants to marry you, you have value, you know. So I think it's all around, and I personally don't know people who couldn't use some enlightenment around this, and you know, it's just all around, definitely.
It seems like it can exist in all of us to different degrees. Is that something you would
I would think
agree
so.
with? Yeah.
I would think so.
So, then what advice can you give? Let's say someone is seeing this video for the first time, and they're realizing, wow, that's me, you know? What advice can you give to someone who may be seeing this in their own lives, in themselves, in their relationships, or in their obsessions, fantasies?
Well, I think there's a lot of information on the internet about it, and look for help, because I think the biggest problem with any kind of addiction, and this is a type of addiction, is that we isolate and we think that nobody understands us. And I remember when I discovered this addiction in me, and I was able to hear other people talk about it and share their experience. The first time I was just sitting there holding not to cry and just thinking, I don't remember what they said, but it just fit. And knowing that I wasn't alone, that there were people who have gone through it and they were having better lives now because they had the courage to look and deal with it instead of ignoring it and thinking that it was normal. It was wonderful. So I would say definitely look for help, whether it's a therapist or a community of people that have been through it, and look for more information, you know, and be gentle with yourself, because it's a deep search.
And on your journey, what do you think was at the very core, the very center of this form of attachment or addiction? What would you say is?
I think it was a feeling of unworthiness. Is what I said, and I remember writing about it. It kind of like, if someone is seeing me, then I'm able to exist. But if I'm just me, then nobody's gonna see me. If there's not someone, because for me it was always a relationship and having the hottest guy and So for me, it was like the hot is the guy, then it shows that I am good enough.
Right.
And so it was a deep feeling of not being worthy, not being a self, which comes also in the society of like your other half. Like, I don't need another half. I am a full being. I have everything I need within myself. And I didn't have the sense of that. I needed someone to kind of show that I was good enough.
You complete me.
Exactly.
So then after your search and your recovery, what do you believe is love? What was it before for you? And what is it now?
I think before was something that came from the outside. It was something that other people would give me, and that would, if I had that, it would make me someone. And I think now it's a sense of self. It's a sense of having a higher power, that being whatever someone believes. In my case, I have my own beliefs, but it's having that sense that I am good enough. And I usually say that it's self-love. And before getting into recovery, I hate it when people say you gotta love yourself, because I always say you have to understand what love is 1st. And for me, self-love today, it kind of goes like, exercise is not a punishment, is an act of self-love, because my body needs it. That doesn't mean I'm gonna do it 6 days a week or 7 days a week, because that becomes not a punishment, but is not healthy for me either. It's knowing that salad and vegetables are healthy for me, but if today I'm having a terrible day and I want to have ice cream, I'm going to sit and enjoy my ice cream, and I'm not going to beat myself up for it. It's choosing myself as a priority. So if I'm in a place that I'm not comfortable, I don't owe anybody an explanation. I can leave because I'm an adult and I can go, because that's my feeling. So that's love for me, is kind of honoring who I am, my own feelings, my own health, my body. I started a meditation practice after recovery, for the past 2 years, because it makes me feel good, because it makes my day better. I'm traveling and I'm enjoying life, and I'm stepping away from people who are unhealthy or who puts me down. So those are the things that for me represent love,
Okay, great. And so when a person may identify with what you're saying, and go through the process of a recovery or see a therapist and whatnot, then that identity could be an attachment point for them as well. So what is your advice for someone who's going through the process, who recognizes it? How do they go about becoming unattached to that new identity, or
To the label?
To the label, yeah. To being in recovery, say.
I think an addict is always an addict. It's like an alcoholic is always an alcoholic, right? They have the first drink and they go back into it. So it's being aware of your trigger points and not using that as an excuse to what you do. And that's very important for me. Recognizing my addiction and my issues is not an excuse to do it. It's actually a point of awareness not to do certain things. So it's, instead of saying, oh, I call this guy because I'm a love addict and I need it, it's more like, let me call someone else, let me step out, let me go do something else to take my mind out of this, because I know this is not healthy for me. I know this is part of my addiction. And it has come a lot during the past few years of being in certain circumstances and recognizing, oh, I'm doing this, I'm going to my old pattern because that's my love addiction. It's always going to be there. But instead of throwing myself and then just saying, oh, I did it because I'm an addict, it's more like, I'll step out. And it hurts, but I'm going to step out because I love myself enough to do that.
Well, Joanna, thank you so much for sharing with us
You're
today.
welcome.
I hope that this is helpful for some out there as well as in there. So please join us next time by subscribing right here. And thank you for being part of our community.